Here's another physical activity quick play with Lisa Workman. I am Lisa Workman. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I bring to you videos that share all the great things about exercise, physical activity, and exercise science. I have over 22 years of experience helping people move their bodies more and better. So today's lesson, we're talking all about, guess what? Muscle action. So muscle action is about the relationship between the resistance applied and the force that's produced by a muscle. So we're looking at things that allow us to contract our muscles against a load and balance that load. But we're also looking at the ways the muscles respond when that force or that external resistance is greater than the force that the muscle can produce. So with all that said, let's dive into the body, peel back a bit of muscle, and look. This muscle will contract as the arm is drawn over to the side. So how the heck does that all work? We've got muscle tissue. At the very microscopic level, we have these microfilaments that cross-bridge with each other, which would be considered a contraction. We have this bridging where they come together, and then we have this lengthening where they come apart. And it happens at the very, very microscopic level. I share this image with you and this video to really emphasize the detail in our muscle fibers. Who knew it was so deep? And again, these microfilaments at the very end are what are doing the muscle contraction and relaxation. So let's get back to our bodies and thinking about the types of muscle actions. We've got concentric actions, which are muscle actions which are shortening in nature that are typically used to generate motion. So that muscle is going to allow those microfilaments to cross over and shorten the distance between each other. Now, the really cool thing is you can pick out a concentric exercise really easily. You know it is one when the muscle attachments are moving towards one another. Well, you might say to me, Lisa, I have no idea what my muscle attachments are. But if you look in this gentleman, he is doing a concentric contraction of the muscle on the front of his arm. He's shortening the distance between his elbow and his shoulder, which is where that muscle resides. And he looks pretty happy doing it. So I think he's having fun with his concentric contraction. Conversely, we have eccentric contractions, and these are the muscle actions, or I should say not contractions, actions of lengthening, where those microfilaments at the very microscopic level are moving away from each other because the load is likely greater than what the muscle can produce in force. So it's a sort of slowing down of the motion and a lengthening of those microfilaments. And the way that you can pinpoint this type of muscle action is through the muscle attachments as well. You're going to see that the muscle attachments move away from one another. So in my image here, this gal is doing a pull down. She's moving in concentric movement initially, but then eccentrically, her muscles are lengthening as she's letting her arms come overhead. So let's see that one more time because that was kind of quick. Hopefully we can play that. Nope, it's not going to play it again. So you can imagine that as she lets those arms come back up against the resistance, the muscles are now lengthening instead. And finally, the other type of muscle action is isometric. Isometric actions are used to help sort of shock absorb or maintain stability. We know that the muscle attachments do not move in an isometric contraction. So it is putting tension under hold. So that load or that resistance that's put on the muscle is being held. There is a bit of a contraction, but we're not changing the relationship between the two ends of the muscle. And the most famous and what you're probably familiar with is a plank. A plank is putting tension under our abdominal muscles, but we are not changing the relationship of the two attachments of the muscles at the breastbone and at the pelvis. So, interesting enough, we can have different muscle actions in our bodies. There are three different ways that we're able to move. So, our recap here is we've got our concentric contractions, those microfilaments are moving and crossing over each other. We know the joints are coming closer together because those muscle attachments are moving together. We've got eccentric contractions, and I put contractions in air quotes because truly those microfilaments are lengthening and moving away from each other, as are those muscle attachments and the joints that they attach to. And then our final isometric contraction is where we have the resistance on that muscle. It's able to manage that resistance, and the force that the muscle can produce is able to balance that. However, we see no change in the muscle length. So there's a bit of contraction, but there's no change in relationship to where that muscle attaches. Finally, these three different types of muscle actions, if we apply them to our exercise, they're going to provide different results. So as you can imagine, when we put a different type of stimulus on our muscle tissue, that's going to result in different outcomes. So insight to action, this is what I want you to think about now, is where in your exercise routine are these different types of muscle actions, whether it be contraction or lengthening, show up in your exercise routine? As well, it's really kind of interesting to also think about how these muscle actions show up in our day-to-day lives. We kind of forget that they happen all the time. We don't need to be in the gym to apply a muscle action. They're happening for us all the time. I can think about right now in my mouth, all the muscle actions happening around my mouth to allow my voice to come through, for my jaw to move. There's always opportunity for muscle action. So think about that. If you need a little bit more help with figuring out what your day-to-day physical activity is, I invite you to join my free mini online course, Assess. It's one savvy step to accelerate your physical activity behavior change. It's really important to know where you are, and this mini online course, Assess, will help you find out where exactly you are with your physical activity. With all that being said, I am absolutely here to support you in your physical activity behaviors. If you need help deciphering these muscle actions in your body, you can definitely reach out to me. You can find me at lisaworkman.com. I am absolutely here to support you and getting you to move better and move more. Thanks so much for sticking around for this quick play.